Rubber baby buggy bumpers, rubber baby buggy bumpers. Okay, that's how you start out, I guess. Well, let's see. Am I in focus? Yes, I'm in focus. Am I close enough? Yes, I'm too close. I'm supposed to be 6 feet away. But I guess that's the way it is. So, and the light looks fairly good. All right. Well, this is having a beer with the Old Growler. Today is Monday, the 6th of April, 2020. And I figured it this way: the Old Growler has been shut out of his pubs, bars, taverns, and watering holes because of a nasty little virus out there. So he's decided to ask you folks, uh, hey, thanks, Mayor. I'm glad it looks, yeah, I've moved the camera a little bit. But anyways, since I couldn't go out to see my friends and have a few big drinks, I figured I'd hang out here and ask all of you folks to come and have a beer with me at 5 o'clock every weekday. Used to be a work day. Well, I must tell you to start out with, the kids at the water. Well, first of all, it's a gorgeous day out there today. And I did get a chance to walk across the Brooklyn Bridge. Hardly saw anybody. But greetings, Monica. Good to see you. Gorgeous day out there, but I'm glad you're in here having a beer with me. In any event, for you folks maybe who are watching this later, I started out earlier this year having a program channel on YouTube that was called Meeting Expectations. And what it was we would sit at the Henry Street Ale House, myself, the bartender Jerry Scott, and a couple of other folks, Jim Bennis, and a few others. And we would take a look at say a bottle of beer, like something like this, Schlafly Session Stout, and we'd read the label as if we were a regular Joe customer, and then we'd say, well, what are we expecting? And then we taste it, and if it met expectations, we got a thumbs up, and if it didn't meet expectations, we tried very hard not to say too much about it. But in any event, to make a short story long, the ale house is closed today, just today, because they're doing some renovation and work, and so I had to. There's no growler with the Old Growler today. However, I went to the back of the fridge, and yes, this looks big, doesn't it? It is big. Back of the fridge, and found a crowler. There she is, a crowler, and this is a UFO brewery fresh beer. It was in Windsor, Vermont. It was the Harpoon Brewing Company up in Windsor, Vermont. We stopped by, and I can tell you exactly when we stopped by. It was July 23rd. So this has been in the can since July 23rd. So it's and it's 4.8% alcohol, and it is their UFO is a wheat style of beer, and it's a peach beer. So I guess I'm celebrating springtime. Greetings from Friendswood, Texas. How are you? And that looks like, oh boy, Carrie Haskell. Well, it's good to see you, my friend. It's excellent to see you. A Norwich buddy of mine. I went to the same university, so it's good to see you, Carrie. I don't know if you caught on, but I've got myself a beer from Vermont, from Windsor, Vermont, and it's a UFO, and I'm going to crack it open because I'm dying of thirst. It's after 5 o'clock. In fact, it's 4 minutes after 5 o'clock, and I haven't had a beer yet. All right, let's crack this open. Well, let's see if it meets expectations. Although this doesn't tell me much, it just says it's a UFO, employee-owned, Boston, Massachusetts, Windsor, Vermont, peach. The government warning. Well, it says best consumed within 72 hours. So we're gonna have an experiment here. All right, it's been kept in a fridge though, so well, it's still alive. Oh, be careful. Ready? Oh, now wait a minute. Hold on. If I had half a brain, trying to pour beer like that isn't too bright. So what I do is I reach into the handy dandy all-purpose knife, and I punch a little hole in the top so that it pours easier. There we go. Wow, this little baby is still a happy soldier. Oh, look at that. Ain't that pretty? That's a pretty freaking beer. That's a little more than 2 fingers, but cheers, Carrie, Mary, Monica, the rest of the crew that's here. Maybe there's a Steve there or somebody, but to everybody here, welcome to Monday. Cheers. Oh yeah.
That's a real peach of a beer.
Yes, it is a peach of a beer. Very clear, very clear in the flavor as well. If I went in there ordering a peach beer, and I would expect it. It's got very little hops. It's got some sweetness to it, imparted particularly by the fruit as well, I'm sure. But it's just an incredibly refreshing beer, and it's not cloying either. So it doesn't really cling to your palate. It doesn't coat your tongue, that type of thing. It's a nice fresh beer, and on a day like today, cheers to spring. Well, what we have to look forward to. I'll tell you what, as I was mentioning before, we have the tasting notes or the meeting expectations. And please feel free to go take a look at the rest of the playlists that I have up there, especially the ones at the Henry Street Ale House. And you can see a lot of what we do have done in the past. And what we've done with the meeting expectations is we would take a beer like the Schlafly Session Stout. I've got one of those here, and this essentially today, when we get to it, is going to be a retasting. So I'm going to put a link below in the information box, the description box, and up there, which will also be a link to take you to the original tasting at the Ale House. And since the folks at Schlafly send me these, so I've also got another one here. This is a Schlafly dry hopped stout. So we have 2 stouts, a session stout and a dry hopped stout that we can see if meets expectations this time. I've mentioned in the past, possibly you can. Well, I don't want to. For those of you who've heard this one before, wherever you have a beer or wherever you experience some, particularly a food or a beverage, if it's in a particularly fun environment, well, that's how you remember it, and then you try to recreate that environment, and it's a little difficult. I think the best explanation I can give you is a personal anecdote. In 1988, I was in Munich, to do as part of a press trip, and later on you'll find out what a press trip is all about. One of the beers that came off of the beer wall is a Michelob, a pale ale, and there's the story behind this one that's the press trip. But in any event, I was on a press trip for a travel agent magazine, and it was to Switzerland to do the SBB, the SBB, the rail system there, when the Eurail tickets were being promoted. And I was in what was at the end of it was the Victualian Garden at the end of the Marienplatz. And it was a fantastic September because it was, we were there for Oktoberfest. And it was a great September day, a late September day. The oak trees were just, it was marvelous. Or no, they were chestnuts, I'm sorry. And I sat in the self-service area of the Victualian Garten and had some leberkas, some bread, and a mass of beer. Now, a mass of beer is a liter of beer. And folks sit there and they don't think anything of helping out with the liter of beer, that's for sure. And the fun part was this was the self-service area, picnic tables, and the beer there, was, if I remember correctly, was a Polaner, and it was crisp and brand new. I mean, just right off the tap, and the Leberkasse was wonderful. And pretty soon, I'm sitting. It was about 5 o'clock, and some other folks came down, sat down, introduced themselves, and we had a fine old time talking about Brooklyn, New York, believe it or not. So the beer there was just marvelous. It was great beer. So I couldn't wait to get back to the U.S. and crack open a bottle of Polaner and experience the same thing. Boy, I had the Munich mug, boy, and so I poured it in there and took a taste, and I was back in Brooklyn again. So you have to celebrate first time or the best time that you ever had a particular beer. Tasting a beer is very important, and where you taste and how you taste. Let's see. Carrie's going to be cracking open a St. Arnold Amber Ale. Oh, I'll buy one. Well, I won't buy, but the next time we get together, the first round's on me. Boy, for having been that long in a can, it says an awful lot for the ability for a brewery to can their products, to sell their product, and it also tells us an awful lot about the fact that if you take care of a beer and you don't let it get too hot, and I don't think we have to worry about light getting into this little fella, but if you take care of it, it'll take care of you. All right, let's see. Now, where are we? I actually try and put together some type of a script here so that it doesn't get too far out of hand. And we are 11 minutes into the gig here, and got 4 folks. I think I know all of you folks. And if there's somebody in there, oh, I got a thumbs up. Thank you very much. Let's see, where were I? Need another sip of beer. That's what I need. Oh, that was good. Now let's see. Oh yes, yes. If anyone here who has not become a subscriber, please click on the little subscription button right down there and subscribe. And even better, give us a thumbs up, and also click on the bell symbol that they've got there, and that'll let you know every time the channel goes hot or the presentation goes online. I'd appreciate that tremendously. Okay. It says here now, thoughts on today's growler and the weather. I think we've already done the weather. It's a beautiful day out there. Beautiful day in the neighborhood. Mr. Rogers, to Fred Rogers, boy, where is he when we need him now? Oh boy. I am very pleased the fact that the peach there is definitely not a cloying thing. It is a refreshing thing. It kind of floats on the top of the flavor. So it's a real. If you ever get a chance to get up to the brewery in Windsor, Vermont, and if I'm a good enough editor, I will again leave a link in the information box, description box below for a visit, because I do believe I have it in one of our channel presentations. So I'll put it down there and also try and make sure that I have a link up above so that you can actually see what a nice little brew pub it is. They have a lot of summertime events that they do, and it's a wonderful little place. It's part of an artists group, artisans group. There's also the Silo Distillery is right down there in that little complex, and a couple of other some of the folks that go out on the river rafting, etc. So it is a wonderful place right there in Vermont to go visit. So once we can get out there and visit people again, I know I'm certainly going to be going up there. Vermont is for 5 years was a great place to be between 1969 and 1974. Carrie was there with me, and it was a good place to be because there was a conflict going on in Southeast Asia, and there was deferments were being taken away from college students, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know about Carrie, but I figured that they figured we were going to be. It is the oldest private military university in the United States, so they figured we would be officers by the time we got out in 4 years, and I figured the war had to be over in 4 years. So and it was, but I lasted there for 5 years. I took a year off to try and sort things out. It worked out, and it was a great place. Didn't graduate, but I got the greatest education on the face of the earth. So to Norwich, Carrie, lift one up to Norwich for us. All right. Well, I'm going to take a look at one of the bottles of beers I was talking about, or the wall, a bottle from the wall of beers. Now, this one here is a pale ale by Michelob. It was put out, it says a specialty brewing group of Anheuser-Busch Incorporated. Well, I'll tell you the story behind this bottle. All right. I believe it had to have been after I was at Bev Media, so it had to have been 94, 95 maybe. And Anheuser-Busch was in the process of putting together their specialty brewing group for the Michelob label. And they got a list of journalists, freelance journalists, et cetera, mainly journalists and editors, and took us up to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, where the hop farms were. Now, let me explain. I mentioned a press trip earlier for the Swiss Rail, the SBB. I'll explain what a press trip is because it really does need explaining. A fellow by the name of Pete Orwell, who either is or was editor of Travel and Leisure magazine, American Distresses magazine, told me the joke. A journalist who specialized in writing about travel dies and goes up to the pearly gates, where he's met by a fellow, with the long beard. Not me. The long beard. And he takes a look at the roster there, and he sees the fellow's name. He says, "Oh, hey, good to see you. Good to see you. Welcome to the pearly gates. But I see here that you've specialized in writing about travel. You're a travel journalist. Huh? Okay. Well, we got a deal for you guys. What we do is we give you a tour of heaven, and then we give you a tour of hell, and then you can decide which place you want to go." Okay, so the fellow says, "Well, I got a pretty good idea what heaven's like. So, Mr. Beard, send me down to hell." So the bearded fellow sends him down to hell. It's fantastic. The weather, I mean, it's as if you were in Shangri-La. There's mountains, there's beaches, there's I mean, it's just wonderful. The people, it's just magnificent. The food is fine. The air wafts with the smell of hibiscus. I mean, you feel it's just, oh, it's like exhilarating. He's sold. So he goes up back to the pearly gates and the fellow with the beard. So he says to the fellow with the beard, okay, I've seen it. I've seen hell, and I know what heaven's like with the angels and the harps and the good stuff. But man, I'm sold. I've got to go down to hell. I'll take hell. Fellow with the beard says, fine, no problem. Boom. The guy's down in hell. He's up to his neck in excrement. He's got a crown of thorns. He's got maggots coming out of his ears. It is so hot. The skin is peeling off his face. He doesn't have eyebrows anymore. And whatever beard he had is long gone. And he shouts out, what the hell is this? And a devil comes over and says, what's the matter with you? What's this? I was down here 5 minutes ago. It was fantastic. The devil looks at him and goes, oh, yeah. You were one of the guys on a press trip. Boom. So that's what a press trip is like. Well, some journalists, and the particular on this particular trip, didn't take Anheuser-Busch's offer because what they perceived as journalism ethics, and I understand it. However, I did go, and everything that I wrote afterwards, I said, as a guest of August Busch III, I went on this trip and was sponsored by them and was very, very straightforward about it. And I did get a chance to meet Three Sticks, August Busch III, and I tell you, one of the most impressive men I've met. He was straightforward. When he was asked a question that he wasn't going to answer, he simply said it. And when he did have an answer for the question, it was thorough, it was straightforward, and it was very informative. So it was a good trip. But the kicker of this, of course, is that yes, it was a press trip, and yes, we were treated incredibly well. It was they spoiled us, and Coeur d'Alene is a great resort and a lot of fun. And finally, I believe it was a Sunday because we came back on a Monday. On a Sunday, they dragged us early in the morning. When I say early in the morning, having gone to Norwich, it's 6 o'clock in the morning is regular time for us. So, but for the rest of the world, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning is early. And they started and went until noon, and then there was a lunch break, and then they went after that from I believe it was 1 until about 3 or 4 in the afternoon of tasting beers. Now, when you think of Anheuser-Busch and Budweiser, you figure, well, there's just one beer, Bud, or maybe two, Bud Light, maybe a couple of others. The brewers at Budweiser, at Anheuser-Busch back then, could brew any beer on the freaking earth and duplicate it. It was scary. They had us tasting, and it made no sense after a while, because after you taste 3 or 4 beers, after I taste 4 beers, there's no chance I can still differentiate really any flavoring. But they had us do it, and that's what they were going for. They wanted to know what beer would be the best idea for them to break, to start out with their specialty line of Michelob. And they did. They corralled us in there, and we had a chance to taste those beers, and I certainly. It was mind blowing to begin with, and when we did get a chance to talk to their August Busch III, I asked him. I said, "You were able to do all of these fantastic beers. Why don't you?" And he told me. He said, "Well, if a distributor comes to us and says that this particular style of beer will sell in his he'll be able to distribute a million cases of this. We'll happily do it. I mean, you come to us with a recipe and or you need a style of beer, and we'll turn it out for you, but you got to be able to give us the figures." So that was a lot of fun. A really great press trip. I'll try and find some of the pictures from it and post them. I'll leave links down below. All right, we're down to 3 people. Boy, I was hoping for more because I had a couple of interesting Thomas Hardys. Now let me bring out one here. And again, this one came off the wall, so you can see by the dust on it that this is an ancient little bastard. And this is I read from the back of it. It says the rarest ale in Britain. This ale is one of the very few British ales bottled with a natural yeast, and it will mature in the bottle like a fine wine. Its flavors will improve if stored at 12 degrees centigrade, 55 degrees cellar temperature, and will last for at least 25 years. If the bottle is disturbed before drinking, stand for 48 hours to allow natural sediment to settle. And this was brewed by Eldridge Pope and Company in Dorchester, Dorset, England. And this bottle was bottled in 1986. 1986. And if you've watched some of the earlier Old Growlers, I've got a list of beers. I've got one from Thomas Hardy from another one from 1986. It is actually still there, unopened. A 1992 and a 2008 Thomas Hardy. So if there's anybody left that would like to, thanks a lot, Carrie. I appreciate that. Too bad I don't have a drum here to hit the rim shot, so to speak. I also have a Ninkasi bottle. Let me show you that. This is a neat little rascal. Oh, refocus. Focus. Oh dear. Oh, some little message down at the bottom of the screen. I hope it's not bad. This is a Ninkasi. It's a Sumerian beer, and it was brewed August of 1989, and it was for the Symposium beer brewed to celebrate the Institute for Brewing Studies 1989 National Microbrewing Conference, August 30th through September 2nd of 1989. It was brewed by the folks at Anchor, and it is a Sumerian beer recipe, which probably has a lot to do with. I'll have to read the label. In fact, I will put I'll put some information on there. But we've got some interesting beers to taste. I've got a whole month to do these. So if you're interested in me cracking open one of those old beers, let me know in the comments section or send me an email. And if you don't have the email, it's peter.lafrance@beerbasics.com. LaFrance one word and Beer Basics one word. Okay. Well, should I inflict another travel story on you, or should we have a beer tasting? I'm tempted to go into a retasting. It's going to make that mean that I'm going to have to do a little bit more editorial or video editings to put up all the links and good stuff. But let's somebody speak up. Do you want a tasting or a story? Which would you be more interested in? I've got plenty of beer. I've still got some of this growler, so I can wet my whistle and tell another story. Okay. While I give you kids a chance to think about that, I might as well fill this up again. Boy, look at that. And I mean, let's see. For over half a year in the can, boy. This little fella, when you let him out, or her out, it's exciting. A story. All right. Thank you. All right, another story. Let's see. What have I got? I got a good one somewhere around here. All right, okay. All right, Carrie. You might remember, in fact, you might remember this here. And the reason you might remember it is because we'd go up to Quebec when we were at Norwich, and I wouldn't say smuggle because it wasn't terribly difficult to do. You just throw a couple of cases in the trunk, and well, as they say up there, the boot, and trundle on back to the good old USA and to the hill, crack open the bottles, and everybody thinks you've got some great stuff from Canada. And we did. This one, I'm pretty. It's the only reason that I would have this one. Right there. Take a look. Okay, straighten it up a little bit. There we go. That's it. This is a McEwen's Strong, and it's. I have to take my glasses off. Bottled, mise en bouteille, Sandburg, Scotland. Scottish and Newcastle Brewing Limited. Malt liquor from Scotland. Liqueur de malt et soyencé. A 340 milliliter, 6% alcohol by volume. And that is all it says on there. And so I can only assume from this is that it was before the tax time. It was before they had to put on the government labels up there and down here. It was before they had to do an awful lot of that. And the only time I can think of, my friend, is the 1960 is 69 to 74. So this had to have been a beer that we brought back on campus from Canada. Another one that we did, and this one is a little bit later, because this does have. No, it doesn't. It doesn't have the label on it. But this one is an Old Extra Stout. Old Extra Stout. The stubby bottles are also a giveaway as to how long ago this was. It had to have been in the late 60s, early 70s. And this one is let's see. It says Old Brewers Limited. 341 milliliters. It actually has the ounces on here, 12 fluid ounces, 5% alcohol by volume. Halifax, St. John, Union made. Now, the reason I brought this one up was because, again, we're talking about a press trip. Guinness, and it was in. I was after I was at Bev Media, so we're talking 94, 5, 94, 95 maybe. Sent us up to St. John to see the folks at the Olin Brewing Company because they were producing Moosehead beer. And I wish I had a bottle of Moosehead to show you, but I don't. At least I haven't gone through the inventory. And the Olin family owned Moosehead, and the Guinness company that was owned by, I'm thinking Unibrew, but that's not, it might have been them. Yes, Unibrew owned Guinness, and Guinness owned Moosehead. And they were going to reintroduce it into the United States, into the market. And the Olin family invited us up to take a look at the brewery and to visit them at their home. And it was a very nice. I mean, it was very it was super. It was a lot of fun. And we sat there again, about 12 of us. It wasn't as a large a group as it was at the event in Coeur d'Alene, but it was a good 12 of us for sure. And believe me, St. John is no exciting place. I'm sorry. It was. They did have a. Oh, geez, I hesitate to use the word disco because they had a ball on the ceiling and they had lights focused on it and it turned. Okay, and they played loud music, and young people would come in and gyrate. Now. Oh, I'm going to get into trouble with some of my Canadian friends, I think, if they ever watch this. And if anyone is watching this from Canada, I truly apologize, but disco dancing is well, it's not something that is practiced terribly well by most folks north of the 48th parallel. I mean, it's just but anyways, they were trying. They were attempting to dance, and it was a pretty good day. And since we were there with Guinness, they were plying us with drinks, and so I was standing there, and I had pretty much. I didn't have the beard then, but I had a fedora, and I wore a white shirt, usually a red tie, a blue blazer, but at that time it was a trench coat, plain-toed black shoes, and wool trousers. And so I'm standing there in this disco, and a young lady comes up to me, and she must have had a couple of the McEwens at 6% alcohol, because she walked up to me and she says, "Pardon me, pardon me," and I says, "Yeah," and she says, "Are you RCMP?" Well, I, I don't. I've never been called a cop in my life, but she thought I was. Anyways, getting back to the Olin family, we did go up there and we did sit down for a review of what we thought that they should do. And the object, we said, well, listen, since the first, the Olin family, the first brewery was run by a woman, why don't you do a retro label and put it on a brown bottle? I mean, take it out of that green bottle, put it into a brown bottle, because your light is a problem, and it looks more retro. And put a retro label on it, show a woman brewing, push that right there as the beer for you could even put it for the family table type of a thing, if you really wanted to push it that way. But mainly a woman brewer, the power of Canada, independence, that type of thing. Okay, and we came up with a really good concept, the whole thing, and came back to New York with a lot of swag. Oh boy, we really. I remember I got a great varsity jacket out of the whole thing. It was. I didn't write too much about it because there really wasn't much to write, because when we got back and the Unibrew people decided to present the new design of Moosehead to the United States market, they hadn't changed a thing. In short, they paid absolutely no attention to us. But I got a jacket out of it. Almost didn't get back into the country because I forgot my passport back then. And back then, I mean, that was easy, but there was it would have been small. It would have been a small problem coming back into the United States. Getting Canada was no problem, but coming back, I probably would have had a problem. But the one of the journalists that was on the trip was oh Jesus, I think his name was Patrick. Can't remember his last name, but he was definitely, he had the map of Ireland all over him. I mean, that was just it. And he was a cop from Boston, and he said, "Well, listen, since we're flying into O'Hare," he says, "it's no problem." He says, "You don't have a passport, and we're coming back through customs." He says, "I'll just put my cuffs on you, arrest you, and walk you through." So I almost got arrested on the way back from the United States, but I didn't have to because my wife sent me my passport via FedEx, and it showed up at the hotel up in St. John that morning. So it diffused that situation. Okay. Wow. We're 5:38, and you folks are still with me. Well, I tell you what, I've got the two beers here, but I've had so much fun chit-chatting and hey, Sam, Lloyd Jones, good to see you. Good to see you. We got a new person here. Wow, we got 8 folks here. Okay. Oh, thanks very much. Thank you. Yeah. Well, wow. Well, okay. I'm going to finish this here. Oh, I was going to finish it. It is finished. All right, it's time for a beer tasting. You folks ready for a beer tasting? Well, a retasting. A retasting. All right, let's get. I have a real passion for session beers, and this is a session stout. Oh, hey, Jazz King. Everybody's got all kinds of really neat monikers. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I have a real passion for session beers, for beers that are maybe 4% alcohol. You can even drop a little bit if you want, but 4%, 4.5. That's pretty much what I like. Hey, Jake, good to see you. Welcome, welcome. So we're going to be session beers are my favorites, and so I was really pleased to see the folks from Schlafly sent me a sample of this, and let's see if I have a due date on it, so to speak. Yes, 10/10/19. So October 10th, 2019 was when it was bottled. So it's been in the back of the fridge for a while. I apologize to those folks. I went down too soon now. Let's take a look at what it says. It says it's 4.5% alcohol by volume, 30 IBUs. The St. Louis Brewery, Limited Liability Corporation, St. Louis, Missouri. And it is a stout brewed with lactose. Now, I do believe Monica caught me up on this one, lactose, the last time. So if I'm repeating the session stout on this, I apologize, but I do know we did it before. All right, let's crack it open and see what we're expecting. I'm expecting a very light alcohol beer, which most stouts should be, but with that extra lactose in there, I would imagine lactose as in milk would be like a milk stout. So why don't they just say milk stout? I have no idea. But anyways, let's crack this open. It should be drinkable. What do we got here? Well, that's a beauty. Oh, yeah, that's a fine little beer there. Hey, Becky Tyne, good to see you. And Jack the Best, good to see you. Okay, we got 2 fingers worth of beer there, or head. Oh, that smells good. A little bit of chocolate. Yeah. First sip. Okay. My taste buds remind me. Yes, I've done this recently. I will have to look back on the Old Growler that we've done over the last 10 Old Growlers to see. Jack the Best, thank you very much. For all of you who are on here, if you'd subscribe and down there, hit the subscribe button, I would truly appreciate it. Certainly give me a thumbs up on this. I'd also appreciate it. And let me know in the comments below what you'd like me to talk about, or possibly what I might have missed. So please keep in touch with me. Peter LaFrance, Peter.LaFrance @beerbasics.com. Beer Basics, one word. LaFrance, one word as well. So do keep in touch on that. Oh, okay. Okay, great. Somebody's enjoyed these beers as well. And and the reason I was hitting my head that I do remember this is because I pulled the same trick last time to shine a light through here so that you could see that it is opaque. And then I started talking about Guinness and how Guinness changed their menu recipe back when they decided to go to their recreation of their 200th or 300th anniversary beer. I believe it was 250 anniversary beer. I'm not too sure, but I'll have to look that up. I understand a session stout, but it doesn't have, as far as a stout goes, this is more of a porter. as far as the flavor go, it doesn't has the rasp. And now, as I'm saying that, I do remember this. We did do a retasting of this a little while ago, and if any of you folks saw that one, and I'm repeating myself, I apologize. But today, this is a nice little fella. I would call it porter though, but it is a well balanced and a lot of fun. So if you do find yourself able to get some newer, there we go, some newer session stouts from Schlafly, let me know, and we'll compare tasting notes. Okay. Yeah, geez. If I could pipe in some smooth jazz, I would. But there's a thing called copyright laws. So I think even if I sang Happy Birthday, I'd have to pay some kind of ASCAP thing. But I thank you. Put on some jazz while you're watching, please. And when you do, let me know, and I'll. No, I'm not going to stick them in my ears, so to speak. No, okay, here we go. We're going to do number 2, the Schlafly dry hopped stout. Now, for those of you folks who are beer geeks, you know what dry hopped is. For those of you who aren't, what that means is that during the fermentation, okay, when you brew a beer, you start out with essentially sweet water, which is water that the sweetness comes from the malt. The malt is brought to the grain is brought to malting, which means that it's allowed to sprout, which has got all of the sugars in it. The starches turn into sugars. When you put the grain into water, there's enzymes on the inside of the grain that turns those starches into sugars, so that you turn all those starches into sugars. You drain the sugars water off, and then you add hops to it to make the beer. You boil it up for another hour or so, depending on the type of beer. Then you take it out of the the mash tun, you take it out of the mash tun and then into the brew kettle, and you take it out of the brew kettle and then you chill it down quickly and put it into either bottles or kegs. There's a step though in that just before you put it into the bottles or kegs, you can put it into the fermenter and you add hops to it then, and that's dry hopping. So this is and I certainly hope that was as accurate as I could possibly be. And that's dry hopping. So this is 5%, 5.7% alcohol by volume, 40 IBUs, the same brewery, and it just simply says dry hop stout. So I'm expecting something that has a lot of hop flavor to it. Let's give it a shot. And again, I do believe this has been tasted before in the meeting expectations videos that we've been doing every Thursday and putting out every Wednesday and Friday. So take a look at those as well. They're in the playlists. All right. First of all, this does look more like a stout to me. It looks like a stout. Let's take a look. I did pour that a little quickly. And let's see, let's have a little light. There we go, a little light, let there be light. It is opaque. It is opaque, so you can't see the light through it. A little bit more than 2 fingers worth of head. Wow. Not much of an aroma. Well, it was the session stout had a little bit more chocolate type of a flavor in it. Well, the dry hopped, I am going to, again, I look at the, and again, 10, 18, 19, we had a good example of how something survives in a can very well. Well, we now have an example of something that does not survive in a bottle. And I'm going to say quite frankly that the dry hopping, when it's dry hopped, it's very delicate, and it should really be consumed as quickly as possible. And so I'm not going to say that didn't meet expectations. It met expectations because of the age of the beer. Okay. Well, now let's see if anybody has any questions. Let me just take a look here. Where was I? Thoughts on today's growler? What is well, that was we'll go. We've already gone on to the tasting. This shows you how technical my script is. Tasting number 1, tasting number 2. Oh dear. A wrap up and teaser. All right. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to wrap this up and tease you that tomorrow we will have a growler from the Henry Street Ale House. And I really want to thank everyone for being here. It is, and for anybody who is still watching this after we post it, you are heroes. Yes, you can. Thank you very much, Carrie. Listen, I'm going to give you a call. I've got the number down there, and I want to make sure that the time difference that I get you, say 1 in the afternoon or something like that, so we can chit chat, because I really would like to do that. Thanks very much. And for the rest of you, have a good evening. It was great. And for those of you who stayed long enough to actually watch this all the way through, and it is coming up almost to an hour, 53 minutes. Thank you. Please subscribe, thumbs up, share this with your friends, anybody who wants to be able to watch somebody pontificate for 53 minutes and 17 seconds. And anyways, I'm Pete LaFrance, the Old Growler, hoping that all of your beers meet expectations, stay safe, and enjoy the next day.